Hi, I'm Laia, and today I'm going to be talking about the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States. It was founded in 2013 as a consequence of the disapproval of some members of the Black community with the outcome of George Zimmerman's trial. For those who don't know, George Zimmerman was a neighborhood watch leader who saw a Black teenage boy walking around and believed he might be suspicious, so he then decided to call the police and report him. And when he did, he referred to him as a black male and used some offensive terminology to talk about him. Before the police came, George Zimmerman shot Trayvon Martin, an unarmed 17-year-old boy, because he claimed feeling threatened. Because of the Stand Your Ground law, he could not be arrested and he pleaded innocent, so he's free. This was not the first time something like this happened in the US, but I was wondering, where does this police brutality against Black people still in the 21st century come from? And more importantly, to me personally, how can a modern, developed country and its criminal justice system set someone like George Zimmerman free? So I was watching this documentary about the 13th Amendment, and there's this professor of history, Kevin Gannon, who said the following quote. I'm just going to read it. "History is not just a set of events that happen by accident. We are the product of the history our ancestors chose, if you're white. But if you're Black, we are the product of the history that your ancestors most likely did not choose. And we are all here together, a product of a set of choices. And we have to understand that in order to escape from it." So looking back at history, we might think that the end of slavery that came with the end of the Civil War would be a starting point to deconstruct the ideas of racism and become a more inclusive society. However, I quickly realized that Black men have always been portrayed as beasts, criminals, and rapists, and that image has been shown to all citizens from the beginning up until now, using the most powerful tools of the time. And one of the first signs of this criminalization process of Black males started with the film The Birth of a Nation. And this movie at the time actually had severe consequences in society because some groups started to violently attack Black communities. And years later, those forms of terrorism and violence became legalized with the term segregation, which gave people both a reason and a way to openly discriminate and attack Black people. And as a consequence to this, some people became activists for the civil rights movement, and these people, the activists, were also portrayed as criminals because they were going against the law of the time. For example, here are the pictures of Martin Luther King's detentions, one of the many times he was arrested, and those images were spread in the news. So for example, if you are a civilian and you see that image, you relate that face to the concept of a criminal because he is being arrested, of course. So that's the way they used images to portray again the image of criminals. And years later, in 1964, the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act were signed, and Lyndon Johnson, the president of the time, said, "Their cause must be ours too." So maybe this could be a sign that they are starting to build a more inclusive society. But then again, at that time, criminality started to increase in the country, and some politicians blamed it on the rise of the civil rights movement. But in actuality, it was related to a demographic change. And in 1970s, the law and order period came with President Nixon, and he didn't directly accuse Black communities of their criminality and problems with drugs, but their political speech indirectly did. And some say that Nixon set the scene, but it was actually President Reagan that actually started the war on drugs. Actually, there's this song by Killer Mike called Reagan that clearly explains what was going on during this Reagan era.
Of the Reagan era, I'm like Lemma 12, old enough to understand the shit had changed forever. They declared the war on drugs, like a war on terror. But what it really did was let the police terrorize whoever. But most lived but they would call us niggas and lay us on our belly while they fingers on their triggers. They boots was on our head, they dogs was on our crotches, and they would beat us up if we had diamonds on our watches. And they would take our drugs and monies as they pick our pockets. I guess that's the privilege of policing for some profit.
Throughout the years, other presidents such as Bush have used the criminalization of Black people, and especially Black males, to do a political campaign. And while they did so, they have continuously been portraying this image of criminals, that animals that need to be caged and therefore literally put and sent into prison with unfairly long sentences of prison. And in a way, throughout history, violence against Black people has been legitimized. So it's, in a way, it's normal that people would exert violence over Black people. To conclude, the criminalization of Black people and the use of mass media to portray these images have had tremendous consequences in the American society today. These images are built in the collective imagery of the American society, which is kind of similar to what happens here with Catalan and Basque people here in Spain. The consequences are tremendous. It has ruined the lives of many people. It has broken families. There's a generalized image of Black people associated to crime, and besides all of this, some white people still have no idea what Black people have had to go through since they were first brought from Africa as slaves. And last but not least, I was wondering what makes the Black Lives Matter movement so different from the others. And according to the speakers, it is not so much the leaders, but the tools that we have nowadays. Because posting something on social media connects you to the world, and it has become a global issue. And also the fact that you can see videos connects with people's emotions, because it's more personal than photos, which is what happened with Eric Garner's video and I Can't Breathe. And finally, racism is not restricted to the US and Black communities. Unfortunately, it takes many different forms around the world, but it goes back to the same concept. A culture exerts power over another one. Therefore, it is a global issue and we must address it globally. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and please let me know if you have any questions, doubts, or comments. Bye!